21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
So the healthcare dilemma in the United States is really made up of three areas, in my opinion, right? You have the payers, and you have the providers of healthcare, and then you have the consumers of healthcare. And the challenge that I have seen over the 23 years I've been in this industry is how there's really been no alignment between the three. So if you think about the normal business, we understand the cost of delivering a service. We understand what we get for the service, and we make sure that we have a profit margin that keeps us in business, right? Healthcare falls apart because we don't really understand the true costs of delivering the service. We are getting our reimbursements cut continuously from the insurance companies. And now a lot of that money is the responsibility of the consumer, who may or may not be able to pay that bill. Right? So you really have impacts to margin in an industry that is impacting every single one of us. And I think that's the dilemma that continues to boggle my mind as a leader in healthcare consulting and software development over my career is how this industry can continue to operate in such an archaic nature. You know, we have made so many advancements on the clinical care, right? You look at the way people are living longer, you look at robotics, you look at all the new procedures and way we treat cancer and joints and osteoarthritis, all of these amazing things on the clinical side, all these amazing drugs and med devices. But what gets forgotten about is how you get paid for that. It seems ironic a little bit to me when I talk to people is, you know, here we are delivering exceptional care, doing the best we can to deliver exceptional care, but we may not be able to keep our doors open, right? Because we're not profitable. And we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of physician groups consolidate. We're seeing a lot of physicians have to become employed by hospitals. We're seeing a lot of hospitals going out of business. And all of this is impacting communities. I know a lot of physician groups who have stopped taking Medicare patients. Most don't even take Medicaid patients. So now, you know, if you can afford healthcare on your own or you have good insurance, then I can be treated. So that's not 100% of society, right? It's a fraction. So there's a lot of challenges that are going into this industry that we all have to consume on a day-to-day basis. You know, whether my son gets sick and has to go to the doctor's office, or my dad who recently had a few hospital procedures and now we're arguing about a bill and how much we owe, and it's a complex world. So I've invested most of my career looking at ways to bring intelligence to the surface for healthcare providers to understand where they're losing money the most. And what I've really focused on the last few years in my career is designing software that looks at the effectiveness of people. You know, if you think about lean manufacturing, right? We know what it takes to put a car together and get it out the door, and we know what we're selling it for, and we know there's a margin there. But if you were to ask a question to any healthcare provider, how many people and how many touches does it take to get an outcome, a financial outcome as in a payment? They can't answer that question for you. It's scary, right? And if you ask the question of, you know, what does it cost per touch? Or more importantly, what is the cost of a bad touch? Meaning that whatever I'm about to do is not going to produce an outcome. So So the industry has been plagued with this for as long as I've been in this career. But we also have another thing to think about. And it's funny, I was listening to one of your shows earlier that kind of brought up this new generational way of workforce and technology. And you got to remember that people now expect more work-life balance. They expect more ways to work remotely, right? The traditional 9 to 5, people have become disenchanted with that lifestyle. And this isn't just a Gen Z or millennial. This is everybody, you know? I make the joke that after COVID, I used to fly every single week. I felt like I flew millions of miles domestically in my career. And then after COVID, I just don't fly that much anymore. You know, my life has changed, right? Part of that's personal, right? Part of it's the professional side. People are like, I'm okay not seeing you in person, you know, or maybe instead of 3 times a year, it's once a year. So when you look at the people that are running the healthcare revenue cycle, and that's the financial administrative side of the system, not the clinical side, you have a lot of people that aren't motivated to do the best they can do. And so you have this labor pool of people that are not incentivized correctly to deliver the best outcome they can at the work that they're assigned to do. So this is another major variable, because if I were to go down that questioning around how many touches to get an outcome, how many people to get an outcome, what if I were to say, who's effective in your team and who's not? They can't answer that question. It's all subjective. It's, I think Matt's good at his job. Well, I think doesn't help, right? And so one of the things that I've spent a lot of time, especially in the last year, is looking at ways in which we can build algorithms that actually look at the effectiveness of people and allowing people to compete against themselves. Right? So it's not necessarily, you know, Martin being compared to Matt, it's Martin being compared to Martin. And does Martin have more capability to be more productive with better outcomes today than yesterday? Is he recognized for that? Is he rewarded beyond what he gets paid for that? You know, and so there's a whole human resources side to the way that healthcare has to start looking at trying to claw back some of this margin that's being lost because of the declining reimbursement and this huge increase in inflationary costs for supply chain and labor. And that's not changing. I was talking to a physician the other day who said, well, it's going to get better, right? And I said, no, sir, it's not. Your costs to deliver care are still going to be exponentially increasing. And your reimbursement for delivering that care is going to continue to decline. That's not a good business. So what do we do about that? We cannot bank that the payers are all of a sudden going to have empathy for us and start giving us more money to treat their patients. So what do? We got to look inside first. We got to say, okay, can I create more capacity in my teams by holding people more accountable for outcomes, good quality outcomes? But in order to measure the quality of outcomes of people, you have to be able to measure everything that it's taking to get claims paid. Every touch, right? And I think that people are starting to understand that, but there's a paralysis right now in this industry with spending money on anything. You know, it's kind of, it's hard when you're losing so much money and somebody says, I need you to pay a little bit more to get a lot more. A lot of times it's still hard to write that check. And I'm very cautious with provider groups that I'm talking with to say, be very careful about what you choose not to spend money on, because the decision to not make a decision could have negative consequences far greater than whatever economic cost it was going to cost you in the short term. And so doctors have to be really careful with this. Hospital systems too. I think that when you get into more of the for-profit players, the private equity-backed groups, right, they're starting to see that now, that they need to really, really look at how they can improve margin by looking at resources and the amount of resources it's taking to get the outcome. But the not-for-profit groups and the independently owned physicians are still struggling with that, and they're the ones that are hurting, and it's not a good time in healthcare for us. I mean, I speak a lot at conferences, and sometimes people say I'm the doom and gloom guy, and it's like I don't feel like I'm doom and gloom. I'm more of a realist. I use an analogy that my dad taught me years ago about sailing, and he said, the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist hopes the wind changes, and the realist adjusts the sails. Right. And I'm just adjusting the sails, and I know that we're not going to have a big move with payers, especially the government, right? Medicare, Medicaid, start paying more money for these services. And I don't think that the supply chain companies and the drug companies, big pharma, are going to start charging less. And I don't think that this wage inflation that we're seeing, I don't think people are going to say, hey, you were paying me more, but I realize you're struggling financially, so why don't you pay me less? It's not going to happen. And then you have a workforce at the same time of people that want to work from anywhere, right? That want more flexibility in their lives, which it's just a reality. So it's a tough business, but I love this industry because it continues to create complexities that my entrepreneurial brain wants to try to solve. And I grew up working in the consulting firms, and I ended up leaving Deloitte & Touche back in 2006 to start my first company, doing exactly what I'm talking about here. And I was young. I was a 29-year-old who basically was fed up with the healthcare industry and knew there was a better way of getting intelligence out of these transactional systems and generating better work drivers for people so that you could actually tell someone, this is what I need you to work on, because the software says so. And then I'm going to measure how well you did at it, right? And so that started my journey in building a company. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that the recession of 2008 and 9, thanks to the real estate crisis, was going to be a tough way for a young guy to start a business. And so I was able to survive and sell it to a publicly traded company years later. But I learned a lot during that time, a lot of things that I wish I hadn't done as a young entrepreneur, but then a lot of things too that I think created some more callousness in myself to be able to get through tough times and not fall victim to being reactive and short-sighted decision making. It takes a certain type of person to want to take an idea that they're obsessing about in their head and do something about it. It's easy to have an idea, but when you have to go put your own money against it and you're not raising money from other people, then it really, I think, is a testament to how much passion do you believe in what you're trying to do. And in this case, it's carried my whole career. I've been at this since 2000, and the revenue cycle, and then specifically the technology development, software development, and deployment is where I'll continue to stay. And I do believe that this industry will eventually start to become smarter. I don't know the timeline on that, and that's always what frustrates. I hate seeing clinics going out of business, or clinics not being able to take certain types of patients, or hospitals closing. Right? It hurts communities. It hurts. It drives quality of care. I mean, you think about, if your margins are under pressure, you can't invest in the new technology that's being developed. Maybe you want to buy an MRI machine to serve your patients better, but you don't have the cash flow to do it. So, it's it would be a very good business school case study to look at the change in healthcare over the last 30 years and where we're at today. So one of the things that I learned early on in life is that, and I coach a lot of youth sports at all levels, including high school, and I try to explain to my kids that you control actions and not outcomes in life. I think a lot of times people think we control an outcome. I have a baseball player that says, I want to play in the pros. And I look at him, I said, hey, that would be great, right? Yeah, I want to do it. So, my first question to him is, well, how obsessed are you willing to be at doing the work that it takes to give you the best opportunity to make it to the pros, right? How many times a week are you going to the batting cages? How many times a week are you asking your dad to play catch? How many times a week are you hitting the tee? What are you willing to do? And you can apply that to any part of your life. This kind of speaks to self-actualization a bit, is I believe that the society has kind of lost that drive. I think when you're talking to your audience of a lot of entrepreneurs, they're probably they have a different makeup than the majority of society, in that they become obsessed with an idea and they're willing to do whatever it takes to make that successful, knowing that at the end of the day, it still may not be, right? I think it was the founder of GoPro who said, I think he had 4 failed businesses before he had a winner. A lot of people would have given up after 1, but he didn't. He stayed with it. One of the things that I'll talk a little bit about, and some of your listeners may have a need or know people in need, is I started a virtual community. It's an app. It's an Apple iTunes or Google Play for Android, and it's for people suffering from addiction. So it's a virtual global community. We probably have some folks even in Croatia that have a platform to engage with other people like them that may be suffering from physical addiction like alcoholism or drugs, or behavioral addiction, gambling, could be, sex, anything related to behavior, or emotional addiction. And that's probably the thing that I'm most focused on now in my journey on looking at people trying to get into recovery, is how our emotions can drive so much of our maladaptive behavior. I grew up in a great household. I have an identical twin brother. And I think of I spent most of my life playing for, I'm not good enough. I need to be recognized by my parents. I need to be differentiated from my brother. And that's carried into adulthood. And so when you think of playing for, I'm not good enough, right? That creates an opportunity for a lot of maladaptive behavior. As if I feel like I'm failing, I want to disconnect, maybe through alcohol. And so I got sober coming up on 6 years here in November. And I remember when I was in treatment at a pretty solid treatment facility here in the US that's known for really the academics around recovery, not just a pleasure place to go to. I remember on discharge asking the checkout nurse, is there anyone I can connect with back in San Diego who's like me, that suffered with alcoholism? And she said, well, here's a guy's name, and gave me a phone number. And I said, is he sober? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, is he a surfer? Is he an athlete? What can I relate? Is he a business executive? Can I relate with him? And she said to me, she said, those would be really good things to know. So the entrepreneurial side of me said, let's create that. So I spent the next year and a half creating this platform, and it's free for the world to use, because I don't think it's fair for people to be suffering from addiction and thinking they're alone and that nobody else understands where they're at. Because I'm here to tell you, there's a lot of people that understand exactly where you're at. And that's been a big passion project of mine outside of my core career, which is in the healthcare software development space. And it's also the thing when I look at the balance of my life, I want to focus on, because I see the impact of addiction now in all generations. And I think this new generation coming up with this incessant need for immediate gratification, everything comes easy. I can do it on my iPhone. How many likes do I have? How many views do I have? It's a scary place to think of VR, virtual reality. Where's that going to take us? Where's AI going to take us? Right? Anything. A friend once told me, he said, when obsession becomes normal, that's addiction. When obsession becomes normal, that's addiction. And so talking kind of back to the entrepreneurs is the best ideas are the ones that you come up with because something has happened to you or someone you know, and you think there's a better way to do it. A lot of people think you have to come up with the new idea, but that's not true. Some people do. They come up with something brand new and it hits the market and they've got $1 billion market cap overnight. But most successful entrepreneurs find a breakdown in something that already exists and want to do something better. They want to evolve it, right? And then the real successful ones are the ones that become obsessed with that idea and are willing to do whatever it takes to push through the hard times, because there are going to be hard times. And how much intestinal fortitude, as my college coach used to say, how much intestinal fortitude do you have to be able to get through those hard times, and frankly, still believe in yourself and what you're doing, and making sure that you develop a team and you build a team around you of believers also. So it's really, I look at my personal life, and my habits now, obviously getting sober and recovery has been a huge, huge success for me and my family, and generating relationships and friends. But I'm very disciplined. I think discipline, people talk about, are you motivated? And I don't like the term motivated, because I know a lot of motivated people that don't have the discipline to do what they need to do. That they say they want to do. I can be motivated to go run a marathon, but am I disciplined enough to do everything from diet to jogging to exercising to stretching to cold water therapy and everything in between to give me the best shot at making it through a marathon? And so I believe in discipline. I also get up very early. I do the best thinking early in the morning when it's quiet. I think there was a saying that said, I love there's an hour when the night animals have gone to sleep and the day animals haven't quite awakened yet. And that's the clear thinking time, and so my wife hates it. She's like, you're always up so early. And she's not an early riser, but I do think that a lot of people that are successful in their careers, they leverage those early hours. Building exercise and fitness and activity and movement into my day is an absolute priority. My teams know, every one of my VPs know that there's a block on my day for probably an hour and a half to 2 that they're just not going to get me unless it's some sort of an emergency. And that's my block to tell myself that I am committed to go exercise. And frankly, it's to tell them that I'm committed to go exercise. What are you doing? Because I really do believe that movement and exercise builds those natural endorphins, which also clears the mind. So there's so many health benefits to that. If you look at the US and the BMIs and the obesity and the diabetes, and I mean, none of this has to be reality, right? If we could get people to have better choices, better decisions, and more discipline on what it takes to be healthy, not just in the body, but in the mind. Because so much of what I've learned in recovery is how when the body's not being taken care of, the mind plays tricks on you. I'm sleepy all the time. I'm sad. I'm depressed. Well, a lot of it could be the food that you're eating. It could be the inflammation in your body because of the food you're eating or the things that you're drinking. There's just so much research now on how when we take care of our body and eat clean and live an active lifestyle, the benefits of that. And so discipline is a big thing for me. It always has been. And I try to instill that in every person I work with or works for me and every kid I coach. one of the big things that I do is I do a lot of volunteer work in my life. And what I've learned in the last 6 years is when I'm selfless and I'm helping others and I'm training people to actually help others also, that actually builds self-esteem for me, right? I feel like I'm actually doing something for somebody else, which potentially could be that person doing it for another person. And that's when you start to see progress, in humankind. And I frankly, I wish there were more people out there that started to look at selfless acts first before they get tied up in the selfish side. Because it's easy to play victim. It's easy to say, oh, woe is me. I need this for me. But a lot of times people forget, like, well, hold on a second. We live in a good country. I got a roof over my head. I got food on the table. I have the ability to transportation. Life's pretty good, all right? But there's still people in this country that need help, So what are we doing to help them? And that's really where I think addiction and working with so many folks trying to get in recovery over the last 5 years has been so helpful to me and I wish I had more awesome stories, but the statistics are against it, I think somebody told me that if 100 people were in a room saying they're ready to get sober, only 95 will make it a year. Excuse me, only 5 make it a year. So 95 relapse in that first year. And if you think of the 5, how many of them are actually transforming their lives and recognizing that through choice they could start to build something extraordinary? 1 probably out of 5. So the goal of myLifeLink, which is the sober community I created, is to try to bring that back. Let's get more people into recovery, and more importantly, get them to understand that they have the ability, if they choose to, and have the discipline to transform their lives into something amazing, And I've seen it firsthand. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I think the whole world might be on LinkedIn now. It's a good business idea, but you search for Matt Seefeld and connect. I'd love to chat with you about really anything related to our topics today, whether you're in healthcare, on the services side or technology side or provider, or strictly on the entrepreneurial side. I do a lot of mentorship with especially young entrepreneurs who believe they have an idea and they want to understand how to build go-to-market strategies and how to raise funds and how to build teams and how to distribute equity and all those things. So, and I made a lot of mistakes in my ventures that I can share with you to see if we could prevent that. On this Sober app, if any of the listeners, yourselves, or you have friends or family members who need some help right now, they can search for myLifeLink. And that's on the Apple Store or Google, and it's free. And they can join the community of sober warriors out there fighting every day to stay in recovery and build extraordinary lives. So we'd love to have anybody as our family continues to grow.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.